So I'm John Valachovic. Welcome to the Raquette Lake Railway in N-scale. Layout is about 9 years old. It actually was featured in a clinic 3 years ago for NERX, if you want to go back and look at that. It is circa 1920. My philosophy is the overall, so I'm trying to go for an overall picture. If you look at my rolling stock, some will be accurate, some might be a little young. But what I'm trying to do is go for just the whole picture and not be fixated on particular things. Like I said, it's about 9 years old. The room that we're in is a former woodshed that was literally made out of scrap lumber. And over time, I sheetrocked it and insulated. It was about a 20-year project to get where we are. So my interests are a lot pointed towards scratch building and prototype research. This is Carter, and the buildings here are kit bashes and scratch builds to reflect that. The layout is controlled by NCE. I'm a big fan of NCE, and I also use JMRI to run phones for the layout. So I control the layout with an SB, which allows me up to 5 throttles, plus the wireless. We operate using car cards. I looked at a lot of systems there's various things. There's 3x5 cards with paper clips, a lot of different stuff. I always went back to the waybills and the car cards. I do it a little differently. It's a very small layout, and I wanted to make sure we had work every session. So the numbers on the cards control the shift. So if we're on day 1, all the cards are on day 1. They tell you what to do. That allowed me to really control and make sure there would be a car for every siding or a couple cars for every siding. Now, a couple years in, I've gotten to the point where I've started adding other cars. So some sessions are a little bit busier than other sessions. We've tried to work through the bugs. I don't have a regular crew. I often have beginners or novices in here. And so I haven't hit that spot where I had to make a lot of changes because everybody's figuring it out. Every time I operate, there's at least 1 or 2 people who have never touched this layout, and in some cases never operated at all. We try to run a schedule of freight and passenger, although like many model railroad owners, passenger is often the first thing to get sacrificed in an operating session. I try not to do that. I try to run at least some of our passengers. There's also some logging trains. This layout is the main line is the Raquette Lake Railway, which ran from Carter at Adirondack Division, and it ran east to Raquette Lake. It's 25 miles. This section right here is the Adirondack Division. This is the only visible part of the Adirondack Division, and the real railroad and my railroad start on a Y. So it travels 25 miles to Raquette Lake. There's a return loop at Raquette Lake. There was in real life. There is my layout. I also wanted to incorporate a logging line. We'll get over to it, but there's a logging line that comes off of the yard and goes up through a switchback and out to a logging camp. Because this was an old woodshed, there's not a square corner or a plumb corner in this entire building. So when I designed the layout, I wanted it to be not dependent about fitting inside of a corner. The whole layout is supported on metal shelf brackets with wooden L girders with risers. I'm a surveyor by trade. I designed the layout in AutoCAD. I figured out all the grades in AutoCAD and all the clearances, and I was able to transfer those drawings to the construction. I build layouts with foam or cardboard or various things. This layout, like many of us, I had a pile of Amazon boxes. So I did cardboard webbing for almost all the scenery in here. There's minor pieces of foam, and there's a lot of plaster work. I did a lot of plaster work because it's the Adirondacks. I'm about frugality. So a few of the trees I'll point out are plastic trees that people kind of dismiss at train shows. I found by repainting them and flocking them with static grass, they look great. I've had people laugh at me because I bought them and then came and saw the layout and admired the trees, and I'll point out that those are the trees you laughed at. But this layout is an example of frugality. I used a total of 2.5 sheets of 3/4 inch 5-ply plywood. sanded one side to do the whole layout. I drew it in AutoCAD, I cut it all out in pieces, and I put it all together. You could do it without AutoCAD, but there's not an enormous amount of lumber in this layout. There's not an enormous amount of anything in this layout. So we'll start the tour here at Carter. Like I said, a lot of the buildings are scratch built or kit bashed. To me, model railroading is a time machine. When I come through the door into my train room, I'm looking at Carter Y 1920 as it might have been. If you travel the Adirondack Railroad, you'll pass through Carter and it's just a wide spot, a big clearing. There's a couple buildings left, but not many. With this layout, I've recreated what it was like. So as we go through Carter, the next thing we go into is the sawmill. The sawmill is Thompson Dix Sawmill. Governor Dix in the late 1800s had a stand of timber that he needed to get out. He built a short railroad spur to get it out. In my time, I've designed the sawmill complex because he finally smartened up and found out it would be better to ship lumber instead of timber. So on the left-hand side, there's an engine house, and there is a early mill. That mill is a hardwood mill. The kit is an N-scale kit. The innards are a HO farm sawmill, a woodland scenic sawmill that I converted to the space. There's a log dump for dumping softwood logs into the pond. And then the big mill, which would be the quote-unquote modern mill for 1920, is a bandsaw mill. They would use a jackworks to pull the softwood logs out, cut them on the bandsaw, and then send them out. This project I've been working on recently to finish it up. The jackworks are laser cut, designed by me, and then laser cut on my own laser. And the main building is scratch built from styrene. The platform is scratch built from styrene. And I'm trying to represent, although in the real world there would be much larger lumber piles, what a soft mill would be like at the turn of the century. Up above it is a reservoir to feed the pond with more water and to feed steam for the steam boilers. I've taken influence from some Adirondack paintings to get the colors on my background. On the other side of the pond, and we'll circle back, is one of the logging landings. I'll show you the Raquette Lake and then we'll cover the logging line. As you come around on the lower level, this is Roundacks Station. Roundacks was a flag stop. There were a few flag stops on the Raquette Lake near the bigger hotels, and they would go out and they would put the flag out when their guests were getting ready to leave. So that's scratch built. It's probably the only one I'll do. I don't have room for all of the stations. So as we come around the bend, we're heading into Eagle Bay. In the background is where the logging line comes out. Eagle Bay had a very large hotel. It burnt, I believe, in the 40s or the 30s. But Eagle Bay really just had a station in the hotel. In my case, I put a 2-track yard in where we do some extra classification on operations. So the first 2 locals, their cars come here and then get sorted for final distribution. I find it helps open up the yard when we're running. This is Eagle Bay Hotel. I am working on the roofs. Again, that was drawn in CAD and laser cut by me. I have to finish the porches and stuff like that. But building it around the pole has proven to be interesting. This is Fourth Lake on the Fulton chain. Hardwood logs don't float as well as softwood. A lot of times in the Adirondacks, we would make large rafts of soft pine floats and cover them with hardwood logs. They would float them across the lake and then unload them up a jackworks and take them from there. So this is a platform for hardwood coming off of the other parts of the Fulton chain going to the mill. As we come around, we come to Uncas Station. There's an Uncas Road and there was a Camp Uncas. This is a really old Railway Express kit, I believe, that I had for years and finally found a good spot for it. So coming into Raquette Lake, we come around the bend past the beaver pond. There's more work to be done on the rocks, but I wanted to do a visual separation between it and the logging camp up above. The first 2 buildings we come across are the warehouse and the ice house. Those buildings existed in Raquette Lake, but different shape and different style. As we come around the return loop, there's an engine house in the back and a second track for storage. And as we come around more, there's a pier where they also would float boxcars across Raquette Lake over to Blue Mountain Lake. Raquette Lake, the village, I've tried to recreate the high points. So I have Raquette Lake Supply and I have Raquette Lake, the Raquette Lake Hotel. Raquette Lake Hotel was scratch built, cut from laser. I had it judged at the last convention. And then Raquette Lake Supply is a heavy duty kit bash of a Lifelike set of Lifelike general stores. So this area is coming along well. It has a few more things to do, plus the groundwork. The station that was at Raquette Lake, I didn't have room. It actually fit between the tracks and the lake. It was intermodal. So I'm going to end up building another station to replace it on the other side of the Raquette Lake Hotel. The store and the hotel burnt in 1927, and I put together both of these from old photos and postcards. So we're going to work our way backwards now. This is Camp 53 in front of us on the upper level. Camp 53 is a representation of the end of the line on a logging line in the Adirondacks. On the left-hand side is a scratch-built mess hall and dormitory building. They were log buildings, equal size with a dog track between them. One side would be the dining hall, one side would be the dormitory. The roofs were tar paper with battens, which is how I modeled it. The next building over is the blacksmith shop. The blacksmith and the stables were really important in this time period because they were doing still a lot of logging with horses, although they were starting to make inroads. There's a steam skidder on the flat car in the front here coming in. As you go through the rest of Camp 53, there's a small station. One of the first jobs of the day is parked in front of the station. That's the local going down, bringing the loggers and, more importantly, the loggers' wives to the big train interchange to be able to do their shopping. All right, so as we come through the wall, we're going to come past Uncas Landing. Uncas Landing is just a 2-track landing. There's a scratch-built log decks on there where they would load the logs onto the trains. So as we come along, we're going to come to the passing siding. There's a very, very short passing siding here, but it's important, especially when you are trying to switch Uncas Landing to get around your cars. So it sits above Eagle Bay, and then we drift on down the grade. Most of the grades here are, I think some of this pushes 2.5–3% coming through on the logging line. And we come down across the log bridge, across the switchback, or the track for the switchback, and then we come through into Odell Landing and reverse and go back down through on the switchback, back down the Eagle Bay yard. So it's not a super involved logging line, but there's switching along the whole way and some good interest. I've modeled some different areas that are growing over. There was another area on the side where there had been a burn. There's another area where we've cut all the logs. So I'm trying to impart the feeling that there's been logging done. So I'm trying to capture the feel of the Adirondacks, and a big part of the culture was lean-tos and guides. There's an artist who has been an influence on my color palette. He was one of the members of the Hudson River School. His name was A.F. Tate. He's great because he was super, super commercial. He sold everything he did to Curry and Ives and get it turned into calendars. This photo right here is called A Good Time Coming On. It's a lean-to in the Adirondacks. The guy who in the suit coat is the sport, and the other guys are the guides. So I used this as an influence on my camp scene. So I only have some hidden trackage for the Adirondack Division. Adirondack Division is just a large loop, and its only purpose is to bring traffic back and forth to Carter. This is the hidden trackage under the layout. Most people don't even notice it after they've been operating the layout for a while. So this is the staging yard. The staging yard represents two geographical locations on the planet. It represents Utica and it represents Tupper Lake and points north. The way I've designed this layout is all the traffic for the Adirondack Division leaves this yard. It's two tracks leaving the yard, one northbound and one southbound. So the staging yard operator has to pay attention if he's running a northbound or southbound for what track he's running out on. I do a little bit of a different system. I don't block my trains unless I'm short-handed. I tend to have everything shuffled, and then the staging operator has to put together the trains. My fear was if we blocked all the trains, then they would overwhelm the rest of the layout because they'd be able to just fire the trains out. So when this operator starts, his first two trains are very difficult because the cars are scattered all in here. When they get to the second and third and fourth trains, there's many fewer cars to deal with. So they put together the trains, they go out, they do their work. When they come back, they live on the arrival track while he does the rest of their work. And at the end of the session, they reshuffle everything back into the staging yard. And it keeps a randomness. I then go through all the car cards, I flip all the waybills, I reset up all the trains. So it's even if somebody remembered how they set it when they left it, it's different by the time they get here. The boxes are set up in the order. I try to make this whole layout be really intuitive. And if you're an experienced operator, you don't need the things. But if you are somebody who's unsure or new to this layout, I want you to be comfortable. So it tells you the trains in order. All you got to do is pull the cars and send them out on their way. I have instructions clipped up here. I have the schedule clipped up here. I have tips and tricks to make your life easier clipped up in here. I have the same thing at the sawmill. Some operators look at it and follow it, and some people just intuitively figure it out. This is the most important. This is the instructions of what's going out and in the order that the things are going out in. This is the other big yard on the layout. It has yard tracks for the sawmill complex, and it has yard tracks for the rest of the work on the layout. The way this is set up is you have to pull the cars for the two locals. There's two locals on the layout. Pull those first, and then start pulling the cars to go out on the locals on the Adirondack Division. This is a very deceptive yard. People get halfway through the session and they think they're ahead, and then all the trains start coming in from staging, and they're very quickly overwhelmed. Or they forget they have to still switch the different logging, the dumps, and the scaling track, and all the other work. So there's a lot of work in this yard. Very popular yard with my operators. People operate this yard once, and they want to do it again and again. All right. So we're going to follow the milk train out to Raquette Lake. We're going to travel through the Y and head over towards the sawmill. We have no work for Thompson-Dix, so we're just going to proceed on through the yard. Continuing up the grade, coming into Uncas Station. We're coming around the return loop at Raquette Lake, getting ready to head back on down the line. So our southbound coach is going to stop for a quick stop at the station here at Carter while it's on its way back down towards Utica. We're going to continue our route down. The Hudsons aren't of my time, but they were way too tempting. So the layout does have an operator's or a dispatcher's office. I run JMRI with a panel. It's got a schematic of the layout, and we run with a modified Form 19. The Form 19s really just give a basic instruction to the operators. Most people don't even use them. And then they'll have a question, and I'm like, well, it's on the Form 19. Just run it off an old raggedy computer, and it allows me to run the Wi-Fi to run the throttles. So that concludes the layout tour. Thanks so much for watching. I'm always happy to share this layout. I share my progress on my Facebook group, which is Raquette Lake Railway in N-Scale. Feel free to look me up. I also have a second page called Val's Modeling File Box, where I dump everything that's not Raquette Lake. It'd be great to have more members join, and I post very regularly on there. Thanks again for visiting.